So I recently went on a road trip to North Carolina and Wisconsin with my fiance and another friend, and I went to some bookstores in those places, and I just wanted to share some of the stories and some of the books I got from those bookstores. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first small selection of books is from a small, actually it's pretty big. It's decently sized bookstore called Book Buyers. It's a used bookstore in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'll make sure to link all of their websites down below, just so if you're ever in the area, make sure to check them out. The first books I got from there were the Eden trilogy. The Eden trilogy by Harry Harrison. I believe he's most well known for his Stainless Steel Rat series. I hadn't heard of him until a few months ago on BookTube from this one science fiction booktuber. I mean, I thought the covers were pretty cool. I didn't get this one specifically from there, but I got the other two from there. Return to Eden and Winter in Eden. This series kind of explores the idea of if the meteor didn't hit the Earth 65 million years ago, what would have happened, and this kind of follows how the dinosaurs essentially would have evolved, and they kind of have their own culture and technology, and I believe you follow some humans, and essentially they're kind of very primitive in modern day, and I just thought that sounded like a really cool idea, and I also thought the cover art was pretty rad. So I'm hoping to get to it sometime in the next year maybe. But I also just like having them around because I do like finding some like older kind of sci-fi hardcover stuff sometimes. So I was happy to find those. The last book I found there at the Book Buyers was this hardcover of The Stand by the one and only Stephen King. I'm sure you've probably heard of him. I've been looking for this cover, maybe one without the red on here, but I'm just happy to find this, and I found it for a good price. A little story about this one. I was checking out with these other books at the store, and she just had received this, I think, on her counter. She was the owner. Her dad had started the bookstore, I think back in the 70s, and they moved locations, and now she was kind of running it, I think. But I just saw this sitting there, and she was repairing a little tear on the cover. And I just asked her, like, how much are you selling that for? And she was like, this is the price. And I was like, okay. And then we had a little conversation. I think she has family kind of around where I went to school. I went to school in Appleton, Wisconsin. She had family in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I'm sure most of you don't know where that is, but that's okay. And we just kind of connected and talked about that for a little bit, and also just about books for a little while. So I've heard great things about The Stand. I know it's a chunker. Yeah, I've tried to start it a few times. I just need to be in the right mood to read this much of Stephen King. And I will get to this at some point, especially in the Dark Tower journey that I'm on. I'm going to restart that because there's a whole thing with that. But I really love the Dark Tower, but I do kind of want to read some of the stuff outside of it as well. So if you're ever in Charlotte, North Carolina, make sure to check out Book Buyers. Again, link is down below. So I did purchase a few books online, a few of the Malzahn mass market paperbacks. I'd have all the trade paperbacks. That's because I got them on a really good deal on eBay. But I also do kind of prefer the mass market, especially when traveling. And it also, I just want to support Steven Erikson financially in that way. So, I did buy a few of those as well. But more importantly, I did purchase The Prophet of Adan by Philip Chase. He's a fellow booktuber. This is the second book in the Adan trilogy. I am looking forward to reading this. I won't get to it until September probably, because I totally forgot that I'm doing a read-along next month, so I just don't have the time for it. But I am looking forward to this. I had my issues with the first book, but I gave it a 4 out of 5. I really did enjoy it, and I like the world. I think the politics really interesting, and the magic system, and I do trust him to sort of improve upon those issues I had with it. But I'm just excited to support Philip and his trilogy and his books and his writing. Definitely keep it up, and I will get to this in September. So the next stop in our road trip, we went from Colorado to Wisconsin to North Carolina for a wedding, then back to Wisconsin for a family vacation. And we went up to Door County, Wisconsin, which is kind of considered the Hamptons of the Midwest. It's kind of Midwest fancy, and there's a few, like 2 or 3 bookstores up there. And the first one we went to was the Peninsula Bookman in Fish Creek, Wisconsin. I recommend just visiting Door County in general. But yeah, the Peninsula Bookman, it kind of had a smaller selection, pretty small collection of sci-fi fantasy, but they also just had a great overall collection of like hardcovers that were in really good condition, especially in the sci-fi section. I did get one other book there besides this one in regards to sci-fi fantasy, but my highlight from this was this edition of The Power That Preserves by Stephen R. Donaldson. This is the 3rd book in the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever. That is a mouthful. You know, I've heard a lot of things about him. I know he was a big inspiration for Steven Erikson and Malazan, and based on what I've heard about the main character, I can definitely see where that comes from. And I have read some like academic articles about this series, kind of exploring those themes. So, you know, I was just excited to find this in this condition. And I saw these editions on the Library Ladders video, and I just was like, whoa, these are really cool. I do have some of the mass market paperbacks, but I don't really like them, to be honest. I am a collector as well. So yeah, I'm hoping to get the other 2 at some point, but I'm not in a big rush because I don't know when I'll read this, but I was just happy to find this edition. So there were a few nonfiction books I picked up at the Peninsula Bookman in Fish Creek. I know that's kind of surprising, but I do want to try and get back into nonfiction. I studied political science and history in college, and I haven't really read nonfiction too much since, and I've been kind of thinking about it some more, and I did find some books there that did intrigue me. They're both by the same author. The first one is Uncommon People, Resistance, Rebellion, and Jazz, which, I mean, just from the title, I wanted to get it. It's by Eric Hobsbawm. He is a well-known academic historian and Marxist, for the most part, or at least Marxist historian, I should say. He kind of looks at it through a working class lens, I would say. I have a few of his books, and I just find what he explores really interesting, especially this book in particular. I'm a big fan of jazz. I was definitely a cool cat back in high school. Not really. Yeah, I really like jazz, and I just think the idea of how music can be, and art can be used as a form of resistance is really interesting. So hoping to read this at some point. And then I also got The Age of Empire, which is the 2nd book in his sort of trilogy that kind of looks at European history from, I believe it's 1789 to 1991, kind of breaks it up in these chunks of time. And I do have the first book as well, but I just found this in hardcover, and I was like, this looks really cool. I've been wanting to get more into nonfiction kind of since reading Malazan. I'm sorry to connect everything to Malazan, but it just is kind of the case, to be honest with you. So this is the 2nd book in his trilogy. I definitely recommend just checking him out. He's a well-regarded and well-revered academic. I wouldn't, take his politics too much into account if you disagree with him. I mean, he just looks at it in a different way, in a different light. And I definitely think that's important to look at. So the final bookstore I went to was also in Door County, Wisconsin. It is called William Caxton Limited Books. It's run by this older man. I have a story about him later, but it's just kind of him. And it was right across the street from where we were staying, up in Door County. So I found a few books there. It was just me by myself. On July 4th, I was surprised he was open. It's a bit older, so if you're ever up there, I don't even know if he'd be open next year. But if you're ever up there for whatever reason, definitely check it out. He's kind of open sporadically now, so I was just surprised to see it open. But let me just kind of go through the books I found there first. So Larry McMurtry has been an author that I know about from Lonesome Dove. I haven't read it, but I have been wanting to try to get into Westerns a little bit more. I did pick up two of the books in this Barry Bender Narratives. It was, I think this is like the second and third book, The Wandering Hill and By Sorrow's River. I just found these covers to be really cool, and they're kind of short too, which is nice. I'm looking to get into this at some point. I also just elsewhere purchased the first and fourth book, I believe, in this series. I really want to get to these at some point. Just I think the covers are cool, and it's a Western, so I feel like I'd be into those maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Then I also got the Song for Our Bon. I know Jimmy from the Fantasy Network, he has a hard time pronouncing this, so I'm with you. Yeah, this was just a cool hardcover edition, and I've been kind of trying to collect Guy Gabriel Kay's hardcovers just because I think, just in terms of a reading experience, I think it'd be kind of cool to like read his books in that way. Yeah, Song for Our Bon. This bookstore just had a ton of kind of old collectibles, and so a little story about him. So I was checking out, and it was just me in the bookstore, and I was, I just kind of asked him like, hey, I'm ready to check out, and then he kind of like looked through each of my books and kind of gave me some judgment on them. I did pick up a few Asimov hardcovers, and he was like, oh, these just got worse over time. And I'm like, yeah, man, yeah. And then we just kind of talked about books for a little bit, and they just kind of kept going. I was there for an hour, but he told me about these hoverflyologists, essentially like these hoverflies, that they're very rare. I don't know. And he talked to me about that for about an hour. It turns out he was a well-known like anthropologist and archaeologist at Roosevelt University in Chicago. His name is, let me get this, Kubi Lichterfield? Luchterhand? Kubi Luchterhand. What a name. I'm going to link an article about him and his bookstore down below. So he had done that, and he had done some digs out in like Siberia, sponsored by the Soviet Union. And I was like, whoa. And he's very interested in that stuff. He just got into the bookstore game like 35 years ago. He kind of just gave me a whole story about that, and I was there for an hour. I just talked to him the whole time. My family was like, where the hell are you? So yeah, that was a really good experience to have, and nobody else was in the store because it was July 4th, and I just thought that was really special. So yeah, these are kind of the books I got from my road trip, and it was a really awesome road trip, and I'm glad I kind of was able to like have those experiences with these bookstores. I really love visiting used bookstores. I try to go to one whenever I visit a certain town or something, just to kind of get a feel for like what that area reads potentially or something. I just had a lot of fun with it. I hope these books interested you, maybe. I don't know. So I know that was quite a lot to say. I'm going to shut up now. Please leave a comment if you read any of these books, or just about your own book buying experience, and make sure to subscribe, and I will talk to you soon.